So we are now live. So because we don't have a chair this morning, we need to do the election of the chair and the vice chair. I will be going through that with you. So to get started, I'm going to open the floor for nominations now. Do we have any nominations? We will need a mover and a seconder. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I would like to move a combo that would have Councillor Weaver as the chair and Councillor McCreary as the vice chair. They've been a very effective team over the last year or two, and hopefully the members will agree and we can continue that. So looking for a seconder.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Wall. Okay, do I have any other nominations? Okay, I'll close the nominations and I will call the vote. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Great, thank you. Councillor Weaver is now elected as the chair. I did send you the roadmap in advance, so I hope you have it.
I do, thank you very much.
Perfect, we can now jump in, thank you.
All right, welcome to the Social Service Committee for Wednesday, January 6, 2021, and a Happy New Year to all my committee colleagues. Roll call has been noted by the clerk, and so I just have some rules of procedure we need to go through. So I would just like to remind the committee of our viewing public of a few procedural rules for our virtual meetings and operating as efficiently as possible. All members must be muted for the meeting to reduce feedback. All web cameras for committee members shall be turned on. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should the need to answer questions of members of the committee arise. Committee members should indicate that they wish to speak by pressing the raised hand button on the participant list screen, bottom right-hand side. And the clerk staff will lower the hand when you have been recognized by the chair for your speaking opportunity. In the event of a connection service interruptions occurs that affects quorum of the committee, we may recess for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. And if quorum is not achieved, the meeting will then be adjourned. So moving along the agenda, is there any declarations of conflict of interest from members of committee? Okay, seeing no hands raised, we will move on. Next, oh, I apologize. Does somebody have a conflict of interest they needed to note? Okay, just a reminder to make sure that your mutes are muted, please. The next item is separations for items for consideration and consent for discussion purposes. So at this time, I would ask members of the committee if they want anything separated to raise their hand and let me know. So any items that wish to be, Councillor Bell, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to separate 5.2 and 5.3, please.
Thank you for that. 5.2, 5.3. Any other? Councillor McCreary, please. That must be 5.1.
An excellent guess, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. And can I now get a mover and a seconder for the motion to approve all items? Actually, they've all been separated. So there are no presentations or delegations for today's agenda, and so we'll go into those items for consideration. We'll start off with item 5.2 and 5.3 first, since it was Councillor Bell indicated first. So for item 5.2, Councillor, could you go ahead?
Sorry, that's Councillor or Chair Weaver. Can we just get the motion to consider all items for discussion purposes?
Oh, I apologize. Yes.
No problem.
Yeah, so committee will now consider all the items for separated discussion purposes. Can I please get a mover, seconder to the motion to place all separated items for consideration consent not previously voted on the floor? So Councillor Antosky, followed by Mayor Davis. Thank you for that. And now we will move into item 5.2. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, just to say, I liked the report. I enjoyed reading it. I realised that two of the authors are sitting with us, so hopefully I'll get really good answers to the questions I need to ask. My questions are simple. Firstly, did we engage with developers in producing this report? I saw one name of one developer, but I don't see the common names that I see every day coming to our planning committee.
Good morning, Mary Ellen McClellan, Director of Housing and Homelessness. Yes, through the chair, we did actually go out with a media campaign and ask for individuals to join the mayor's housing partnership task force. So we did have the one developer. No others came forward at the time, so it was deemed appropriate to go. But we did do a full media campaign asking for individuals to come forward.
Okay, thank you for that. The reason I asked the question is that I know back in the country I originated from, it's typical for municipalities to demand of developers that they, when they create a subdivision, that they include a certain number of houses or properties that are affordable. Now, I don't know whether that same process happens here in Canada or within the county and the city, but it seems like there's an opportunity there that I don't feel like we've fully engaged with the people that really can help us most in terms of quantity, in terms of providing new affordable houses and homes. Perhaps one of the team could comment on that.
Through the chair, we are not currently undertaking inclusionary zoning options. We are investigating a number of different partnership opportunities with developers as we go forward into new development for affordable housing.
Thank you. Just to follow up there, do we have the right or the ability to demand inclusionary housing, if that's the term? Appreciate knowing that.
Through the chair, that is a planning issue. I would have to rely on my planning partners. I don't believe there is anyone here today to speak to that, but I can certainly ensure that we can get back to you with that.
Okay, I would very much appreciate that. Second question relates to the numbers, the 55 million. I think that came not from this report. I think that came from an earlier report. And my question really related to it is the split between the city and the county of 72.5 and 27.5. Does that represent the ratio of the number of county residents that are accommodated in this kind of housing relative to the number of residents from the city?
Through the chair, that represents a proportional share of the net municipal cost. And it's, so it's the net share of the proportional cost to the municipalities for the affordable housing based on population.
But does it reflect the utilization of the affordable housing stock by people who are resident in the county and those that are resident in the city?
Does it reflect currently, through the chair, currently the cost share is a combination of population and those utilizing social housing within the county. However, there is no there is no amount for any new development. That is for operation of social housing. That is the current model. But going forward, a new development has been proposed a little bit differently in order to be able to do capital going forward in the next 10 years.
So to be clear, the 27.5% is a proposal, not a fact at the moment.
It is a proposal.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor McCreary, is that a legacy hand or is that for this question period?
It's actually both, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Is it my turn now?
Okay. Yes, it is.
Through you to staff, Mary Ellen, I wonder if you could tell me if we have arrived at the number of housing units needed by each of the two municipalities.
Through the chair, that has not fully been determined at this time. There are many factors that will affect us going forward. The one, of course, important factor is availability of land. We know we have a commitment to build 500 units over the next 10 years, but that split hasn't been determined. We would use availability of land and identified need. We know what the current need within the county is right now based on our affordable waiting list. So we use those numbers based on availability of land and ability to actually get that housing in the ground. But there's been no specific mapping indicating exactly where that housing might go. And in addition, that may that may shift off a bit as new initiatives come down the pipes. Other housing options get utilized within the county. It may reduce the need for example, on the affordable housing waiting list. So it's kind of a moving target.
Do you know what the waiting list is for each of the two municipalities?
Yes, the rough estimates as of November were a little bit over 500 individuals for Paris, which we're targeting for the next build, and over 800 specific to the Brantford area. That being said, many individuals apply across the sector and will accept units in both the county and the city. So really, they're not just simply applying for one place. The waiting list reconciles down to one number, but individuals could be applying for a number of communities within both the city and county.
Do we have a list which identifies wait list folks by their current municipal address? In other words, of the 800 that are on the waiting list for apartments or for units in Brantford, how many of those would be people currently living in Brantford?
Through the chair, that's not something we maintain. It's simply where they want to go, and it could be anybody within anybody who's a Canadian citizen across the country. So it doesn't. We're not breaking down the waiting list based on where you're coming now.
You can though.
We could. We are implementing a new system, which, in fact, in January, which will give us the capabilities to break down exactly where they are. So that is a new system being implemented.
Okay, so you could apply some of the criteria we've talked about, and then arrive at a specific number of units required in city and in county, or county broken down by former town or a village location.
Through the chair, absolutely. And we have done those studies in the past, say around St. George and whatnot, but it's more digging. Our new system will allow us to immediately give us those numbers.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I'll have an amendment when everyone else is finished up.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. Next, I have Mayor Davis, followed by Councillor Sless. Mayor Davis, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you. I think Councillor McCurry actually asked the question I had, but I'll refine it. And wondering, Mary Ellen, if it's possible with these new tools to tell us how many people currently housed in facilities in Brantford and those on our waiting list that were originally from the county but moved to the city to be closer to, health and social service supports, or even just to take up housing, which generally has not been as extensively available in the county.
Through the chair, we'll have to look at that in terms of previous information and query. I believe that it will have the capabilities to do that. We'll be able to search by previous address and see where they are going. Anecdotally, we do believe that individuals are moving from the county to the city to access services, specifically homelessness type services. So that's an anecdotal comment. However, I believe we'll be able to query with our new system much more effectively once it's fully implemented.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Sless, followed by Councillor Antosky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you've answered this, but I just want to be clear in my own mind, Mary Ellen. I think you indicated you keep a list of the county folks and you keep a list of the city folks, but at some point you must mesh those two because people can cross borders even though there are none. Is that at the end of the day the longest waiting person or the most suitable person is the one that gets the placement? Is that correct?
To the chair, that's absolutely right. We keep applicants, when they apply, they choose their municipality and the buildings they wish to reside in. If you were to add up everyone on the waiting list, it would certainly far exceed that 1,700 household that we talk about as a larger number, because individuals will often ask for more than one municipality. The waiting lists are so long that they'll often take whichever one is offered first, depending on their personal circumstances, of course. So but that is changing. Legislation is changing, and they will be only allowed one offer of housing. So going into the future, it'll be a lot more important for applicants to select their community and their specific building of choice more readily, because that's what they're going to be offered. They're not going to be made several offers of housing. Right now, they can be made 3 offers of housing and can turn down the first 2 offers. So they're a little wider, but going forward, they will get 1 offer of housing. So more important that they pick where they want to go.
So currently then, if I understand that, Mary Ellen, if somebody declines the first offer, they don't go to the bottom of the list, then they stay on the top and wait for the next opportunity. And they would get the next opportunity. Is that correct?
Yes, through the chair, that's absolutely correct. That is, but again, legislation is changing that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And next we have Councillor Rentowski. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Mary Ellen. I'm looking at the inventory map and the black dots that are indicating, you know, where we could possibly put some more affordable housing. And I didn't see this, so I'm sorry if I missed it, but for each location, have we looked at, you know, what the possibility of the build is there? So for instance, we know our dots are, this is 1 to 5 people, this is 25 to 30 people. Like, how many units could these new dots represent?
Through the chair, that's an interesting question, because we have basically turned over every rock for available land within the city. So many of the, although they're identified as particular pieces of land, they're not necessarily zoned correctly, or we don't have the ability to build on them right now. There are about 5 pieces of land that we're currently working with planning department to further flush out and investigate how long it might take to get some appropriate zonings in place that might accommodate some lands. There's some brownfield work that still has to be done. There's a number of activities that still have to be done before we could look at potentially putting any affordable housing on those lands. Although the mapping looks like it has a number of lands, much of those lands are very small, irregular sizes, improper zonings, have easements, or have other issues. But there are 5 that we are looking at.
Okay, so if we had a magic wand and said that all of those, we could get all the zoning, you know, issues resolved and stuff, do we know what the maximum amount of, and I know I'm asking for a range because, I mean, we haven't gone through a planning process, but I'm just trying to look at, you know, some of them are very small, might only fit, you know, a couple of units. Some do we have a range of either the total number of what this might you know, put a scratch in our list for, or even just those 5, like those 5 that you think are more promising? What do we think the maximum number of units could be with those 5 locations?
Through the chair, with those 5 locations, depending again on the planning process and the zoning and the height, normally, and depending on the type of housing, it's better to go a little bit larger. There are economies of scale in developing those units. And we believe that if we were to wave a magic wand and all of those 5 pieces of land were to become available for us, we could potentially get the full 500 municipal units in there. But there's a lot of ifs there. There's a lot of work that has to be done in order to make those lands you know, appropriate to come forward. We've identified, of course, the first new development and then the second new development in our capital plan, and we have put some placeholders in our capital plan to build those other units, but because we don't know where, we can't do any further planning.
Great, thanks, Mary Ellen.
Thank you, Councillor. And just before we go to Councillor McCreary for his amendment, is there any other first-time speakers? Okay, so I have a couple questions. So there was a lot of good questions asked and answered. So I'm just wondering if staff have anything else that they feel that really needs to come out from this report. And I guess it'd be remiss if I also didn't congratulate Mayor Bailey and Mayor Davis on the task force. I thought it was an excellent process, and I'm looking forward to having it implemented. So, Mary Ellen, was there anything that we haven't discussed yet this morning that's in the report that you feel that the citizens should really hear about?
Through the chair, sorry. I think it was important to just note that creating more affordable housing options and accelerating new housing development is really critical to improving the economic stability, health, and well-being of individuals and households, both in the city of Brantford and the county of Brant. And this was an incredible piece of work. This task force was came into effect in November of 2019, and it was established with unanimous support by council. So we thank you for that support. And there's been a tremendous amount of work and partnership within this. The task force was established to develop those partnerships to accelerate the development of affordable housing and to come up with the action plan that is very, very concrete and has a number of activities within the action plan. It was also developed with 5 project teams. The project teams were the inventory and mapping team, which has already been referred to. That's a critical piece of work as it's helped us to identify where those lands are and where we need to put future efforts. The financial options team was established and a great deal of work went into that. The mentorship team, and the mentorship team is it's kind of a crucial piece of work in that individuals who want to come in or do affordable housing anytime within the future, there's now a plan and a mentorship team and a piece of work that can help any new group to get into affordable housing in the future. There's an industry partner team and a joint application team. And this joint application team will be utilized as new grants come through for joint applications. We have indeed submitted our first application to the federal government, and it is a joint application as well. And project teams and all of the activities are indeed included in the sort of the meat and potatoes, as I call it, of the Appendix A, which is a very long and very inclusive action plan for delivery. And it's Appendix A, and it covers all of the work of all of the project teams. So we're very pleased with this. We're very pleased with the final product, the work that's gone in it, and the partners that we've developed through this process. We feel that will go forth very, very valuable in the development of affordable housing as we get into the future.
Thank you for that, Mary Ellen. And I see Mayor Davis does have a question. I'm assuming it's something that Mary Ellen had said to spark that question. So just before we go to Councillor McCreary for his amendment, Mayor Davis, second time.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, with respect, I'm a bit confused. So we're on 5.2 now, and
Yes.
so when can we go beyond just questions and make comments about it? When do you do that?
I mean, generally, you can do so now.
Yeah, so I'd like to do that. Might as well start the clock because I'm going to be a little while. But first of all, I want to say a big thank you. I want to say a big thank you to my county counterparts for participating in the process. A really big thank you, of course, to housing staff. They did a lot of the heavy lifting here, and I think they did a great job. And of course, the partners we had on the housing task force, we had these various teams or subgroups. And a lot of the partners, so these would be the directors and staff of nonprofits, like Kiwanis East, Indwell, et cetera. They did a lot of work here and putting together the recommendations that came out of the various teams, like the mentorship team, which is really focused towards, not just the city and county doing something, but other partners in the community doing something with us. So that's what was very encouraging. And also a big thank you, of course, to our chair, Councillor Weaver. It was Councillor Weaver who planted the seed in our heads that this is something we should do, and him pushing consistently on the issue of housing got this on the table, so to speak. And I was very happy to take Councillor Weaver's advice and run with it. The other thing is that the focus in some housing task force has been, more conceptual, like these are the kinds of things we should do and how we deal with housing. And we've had those in the past through housing forums. The focus of this committee was task force. How do we get more affordable and supportive housing into our communities? And that's why I found it to be a very rewarding task, that it was very action orientated towards how do we do that? Where will it be? How do we get it done? Who's going to do it? How do we pay for it? Provide a roadmap for even groups such as churches that might have excess land but no skill set, and giving them a roadmap to how you can get involved too if you want to do something and help out in this problem. Yeah, I'm really confident that city and county and staff and our partners working together, when we sit here 5 years from now, I'm sure we'll be able to say, hey, we really did something to address the unbelievable stress and toll that this affordable housing problem is causing across the community. In terms of the final result, I also want to tell the community, I know we've got a hangover here from the 1960s, from housing developments that were done in the 1960s, right? And a lot of what we have here in the city was done then. And it was really single purpose built for social assistance recipients. And what's coming now is nothing like that. It's a much different concept. You first saw the John Noble Home Apartments. It's a mixed community. So it doesn't create the kind of ghettos that you've seen that were done in the past. We've learned from those mistakes. I realize the community, there's a lot of skepticism out there about it, but I'm hoping with the next 1 or 2 builds, whether it's Trillium Way or wherever, we can show the communities, look, these are different, and they'll fit into the communities much better than other developments have in the past. And so that's what also makes me very optimistic. Lastly, to my county counterparts, I appreciate, there's a big ask in here of the county. And I know from our experience at City Council, that's a tough ask to deal with. Being asked to deal with a problem we all know we have, the extent to which it's here in the county or in the city, and the extent to which it migrates from the county to the city, we could argue the cows come home about that. But I think we can look to other areas of the province. There are lots of other regions that do this. And typically the sharing of costs is weighted assessment, which would be very detrimental to the county. And this proposal doesn't do that. It's looking for population. So I just want to say to the county reps, I realize this is a tough issue to deal with. It's a lot of money. It's a commitment over many years, but I'm really confident that we'll work our way through it. We'll find a solution to it, and we'll both be better, stronger communities, no matter where someone is housed, and no matter where they come from within our area, that they'll be able to find that housing, and give them some choice. If they want to live in the town of Paris or somewhere else in the county, hopefully we can give them that choice. And perhaps many who are from the county would prefer that. And I think that's a great goal, that, if we aspire to be a region, although it's 2 separate tier 1 municipalities, I think we can demonstrate to the rest of the province in particular, that, hey, we can do it, even though we're not a formalized regional structure. And so I'll remain optimistic. I'm hoping with the new year and everything we've dealt with over the past year, we've all learned lessons from it and can work together cooperatively. But I did want to say to my county counterparts, I appreciate this is tough. It's a tough ask. And whatever we can do to help with that, just let us know.
7 seconds left, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I know, I was good, sure.
So now we'll go to Councillor McCreary for his amendment.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'll try not to leave any time on the table like the mayor did. So my amendment's a bit convoluted and wordy, and I'll provide the wording to the clerk after the conclusion of the meeting. But it would add an item H to the agenda item before us, Mr. Chair, and would read that staff prepare an amendment to be presented at Brantford City Council to refer this item back to staff to determine the applicable city-county units required and to examine separate streams for each municipality. And I'm seeking a seconder. If you'd like me to repeat that one more time, Mr. Chair?
I think that would probably be best.
Okay, so item H, that staff prepare an amendment to be presented at Brantford City Council to refer this item back to staff to determine applicable city-county units required and create separate streams for each municipality.
So just for clarity then, Councillor, so when this comes to City Council for approval for these minutes, that's when you're expecting to have a report indicating the split?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and sorry, the amendment would come forward at our council. I wouldn't predicate, that's why I've specified Brantford's council, because I don't want to, specify on behalf of the county of Brant, our partner. I simply like this to come to our council with an amendment ready to do that, Mr. Chair. That's the point of it.
So if it's just coming to our council, what I would suggest then, and the clerk will hopefully correct me if I'm incorrect here, but I think it would be more appropriate to wait until it comes to council and make that amendment at that point in time, unless of course you want to make the amendment here in hopes that the county will also make the amendment with their folks when they have their meeting.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, that I want to be above all transparent with our county cousins here and tell them what we're about to do at our council. And perhaps the county may wish to introduce a similar resolution at theirs. I don't think it's appropriate to do the amendment here to do that work, Mr. Chair. I just want to notify the county, sort of like a notice of motion, that we'll be bringing it to our council. Okay.
Okay. So that's technically not an amendment to this report then. So that amendment will be coming at a future council meeting. Okay. Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Chair, actually, my amendment is to have staff prepare that amendment as part of this resolution. So we would include in this amendment direction to them to prepare that for council. Okay. So I do want to have it. I do want to have it seconded if I can and voted on here today.
Okay, Councillor. And what I would like to suggest as a friendly, once this gets, actually, let's get it on the floor first. So is there a seconder for Councillor McCreary's motion? Sorry, Councillor, not seeing a seconder. We will move on to Councillor Toski. Your hand was removed. Do you have a question still?
No, I'm fine now. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on item 5.2? Okay, I just have one comment I just wanted to make. So Councillor Bell, you had mentioned inclusionary zoning in one of your previous comments. So when I believe it was the Liberal government moved forward with inclusionary zoning, which was the first for Ontario, and in that zoning, we were going to be able to take some of our development fees and put that into fees for affordable housing, as well as ensuring that a percentage, and really the legislation when it was introduced, I think it was up to 10% of the units. However, when we had the government change, the Conservative government came forward and made some amendments to that inclusionary zoning, and really the amendments made it so only Toronto actually is able to do this, because they're the only municipality in the province that has a density already in place. So really the inclusionary zoning is not something that affects any other municipality except for really Toronto, unfortunately. So it was something I was all over trying to find some additional funding for affordable housing. So with that, I will call the vote on item 5.2, please. All those in favor, please raise your hand to signify. And that carries. Thank you very much. Councillor Bell, let's go to item 5.3 now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I thought it was a very helpful report and appreciated it. Some questions. The unit cost has gone up quite significantly. I appreciate that the price of housing on the market has gone up, but does that also reflective of the unit cost of the cost of build? I don't know whether we're just in the throes of a housing boom, which is affecting real estate agents and buyers and sellers, but I don't know what the effect is on the cost of building new, and perhaps somebody could share the background to that to me.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I believe Deb or Mary Ellen were going to speak to this item if they have the answer.
Yes, hi, Deb Schlichter, Manager of Housing Programs. The chart that's shown on the page 5 of the report does outline the budget, the capital cost, and you'll see that the figure for construction, the assumptions are different than the original budget. So yes, we have increased the construction cost to what is reflective of reality today. We did our own scan across current developments that are happening and what their per unit costs were, specifically around modular, because this particular building is going to be a modular construction. So we were looking at what those costs would look like. with other groups that have already done this. So that's why the costs have increased.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, Deb. Again, if I may just follow up on that, we are looking within the county at a building in St. George in the High Street. It's, I think it's Russell Heights, if correct me if I'm not right on that, but I don't recall a unit cost of that magnitude. I think it was closer to the original number that you quoted when you had the 25 unit block. So that was my surprise, and maybe you're correct, and I'll stand to learn on that one. If I could ask a second question, which is how we got from a 25 unit block to a 49 unit block. I think great is the answer. I mean, fantastic. What helped us to get to that point?
Yes, again, through the chair, we had done a feasibility study. This was based on a report that came to council about increasing density where we could do that and making sure we got the full use out of property and land. The feasibility study came back and said that we could actually build more units on that site to use the full density that's currently there without requiring any changes to zoning. So that's why the number has increased. Yeah,
so if I may, just on that, tying the two questions together, typically when you build more, the unit cost goes down. So this is, it sounds like a double whammy. We've increased the number of units and the unit cost has gone up quite significantly. So I'll leave that on the table. But a couple of questions about the table that you've got there. We are assuming that we are successful in the rapid housing initiative. What happens if we're not?
Again, through the chair, we have put this in our capital budget. Originally, we were planning to do this development regardless of funding that was going to come from other sources. It just so happened that the Rapid Housing Initiative was announced late October of last year. And we thought, what an opportunity to maybe be able to use federal money instead of local funding. And so that shifted the budget around and it lowered the costs for the municipality and the county. So what would happen if we don't get that? We go back to the original plan that was already in place.
Okay, thank you. Just one final comment. If we're paying $250,000 per unit, then times the 500 that is the target for the next 10 years, that comes in my maths, I think, to 125 million and not 55 million. So maybe I'm forgetting the analysis we've done before, but is that 55 million then still valid?
Again, through the chair, the amount of money, the 55 million, wasn't the full cost. The original estimation was around 108 million, I believe, and 55 was what we could find in current available resources. There is the ability to debenture and also borrow some funds. So we know that a building can be sustainable if it has a bit of mortgage to cover. And so there's some debt that could be in there to make up the difference.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correct, then not it's 108 to 125, so that's 17 million, which somehow or other doesn't affect 55 million, which we've seen before, because we have other routes to solve the problem. Is that the summary?
Right. If we have to go to debenturing, we will use that. We don't want to use, we don't want to obviously have too much debt because that affects the amount of rent that we can charge. We want it to be sustainable. So the more we can bring the debt down, the more we can bring the rent down.
Okay, so I think just to summarize all that, I would like to see, if it's possible, an update, given this new information about unit costs, on the analysis we saw previously that led us to the number of 55. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, I have Councillor Antosky, followed by Councillor McCreary. And just a reminder to committee members to use the raised hand feature. Councillor Antosky, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I simply wanted to offer some context to cost of building materials. Some of you may know we use a lot of lumber in our business, and since COVID has hit, we have seen a 70 to 300% increase on the cost of raw materials. So it is significant, and we don't, at this point, see any light at the end of the tunnel in terms of those costs. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCrory, followed by Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff. Could you indicate if you know or if you can determine the relative percentages of contributions to the Housing Reserve Fund by each municipality?
Okay. Through the chair, there is one reserve fund that is both county and city, and it currently has 3.8 million. This is this city county reserve does have surpluses from current housing providers, community housing providers that are put within that reserve. So the reserves available right now for city and county are 3.8 million.
And to what extent did each of the municipalities contribute to that account?
I currently don't, through the chair, I currently don't have that information. It is one pot as the community housing providers are spread across both the city and county. So it is one reserve. We could go back and do that analysis, but it was set up as one reserve for surpluses, 50% of any surpluses from housing providers to go into that reserve.
So the surpluses probably would have been arrived at with the 2/3, 1/3 split. Would that be fair to assume, or?
I think that's fair to assume.
Okay, but in any event, when we ask for that, it's not a difficult computation for you to make, Mary Ellen?
I don't believe so. Yeah, I think we could do that.
Okay, and the valuation of the city-owned land at Trillium is just over $1 million. When was that? Value established?
Through the chair, I believe that was established very recently with the assistance of our real estate and legal department.
Okay.
Within this past 6 months.
So what's the total City of Brantford contribution to this project? I mean, presuming that we get the fund approved, right? The what's it called? The RHI. Okay. I just love these acronyms. It's not as fun as Skippy, though, is it?
I can turn that over to Deb Schlichter. I believe she has those numbers ready for you.
Yep.
Sorry, I think through the chair, the question was
the total amount of the city contribution.
Right. The city contribution at this point would be, I think, just the combined housing reserves is where everybody's contribution comes from. I don't. The other pieces are grants that we're getting. So again, the OPHI is a grant, so it doesn't sort of belong to anybody. It sort of comes in.
So for us, then it'd be the land value plus the percentage that we contributed to 3.8 mil.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Kind of following on some of Councillor Bell's comments, you know, the one factor that's hard to nail down between, you know, when you go from say 110 to 55 or 125 to whatever, you know, are the federal and provincial grants. And sitting on AMO, and I'm sure Councillor Toth can tell, sitting on FCM, there is a movement afoot in those levels of government, I think, to take more seriously the housing issue. I think we can look forward to, you know, better flows of money coming from them, not at 100%, but certainly more than what we've seen in the past. And they're really looking for those shovel-ready projects. We're seeing that right now in that RGI program. The other thing about the costs, and Councillor Sluss, you might be interested in this. I had a sneak preview of the building on Grand River Ave that Maltani is doing. And that's a really interesting building. It looks great. It's completely affordable. Now, that doesn't affect our waiting list because affordable in that context means they've received money from CMHC. And so the tenants they have in there will be paying rent, but they'll be paying rent at a percentage of market rent. And that's a commitment they have to make to get the CMHC funding. So that addresses in part the issue of rent affordability for those that aren't on social assistance and but need help in paying their rent. So it doesn't make up 70% of their income. But what's interesting was talking about building costs. And in that building, when you look at it, like there's a brick veneer to it, but it's veneer. It's like a one piece, 60 feet high and 30 feet wide. They just slap it on the side of the building. It looks like brick, but it's very cheap. They did say that the cost, because of COVID, because of restriction on the supply of building materials and an increase in demand because the construction industry is just still going booming, but they didn't really anticipate that remaining in place to the same degree after COVID, assuming that the supply lines are opened up more than they are right now. But it's an interesting set of times. And but I think the one thing that's very positive is all the messaging I'm getting out of, especially the federal government, is they want to flow more money into, especially municipalities that are taking this and areas that are taking this seriously and have in hand plans to do something. They want to help fund it. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And seeing no other speakers, we will call the vote on item 5.3. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that carries. Thank you very much. This brings us to item 5.1, which was separated by Councillor McCreary. Councillor McCreary, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. This is talking about investing in providing renovation funding for folks that want to create accessory units in existing residential neighborhoods. And I'm not sure if I'm the only councillor that's heard these concerns, but I kind of doubt it. I hear a lot from folks who've been longtime residents in single family neighborhoods that are very disturbed with, excuse me, with the intrusion of developers into their neighborhoods and who are generally buying up corner lots and duplexing homes in long established single family neighborhoods. And that's something that was implemented by the prior provincial government and remains in force to this date. But as I've said, I've heard a lot of concerns about this, and I'm not sure that we're on the right track by investing Ontario Renovate's funding in these types of projects. And I'm very concerned about our potential for stepping in another pile of doggy doo on this. And I think that we probably should be going to the community and asking their impression of this program before we commit to it. So I'd listen to what others have to say, Mr. Chair, but I'll come back and have an amendment at the end, if I may. Thank you.
Any other speakers on this item? Okay, I just have a couple of questions for staff before we go to, and I see Councillor Antosky, so we'll go to you, Councillor Antosky, next. So my questions for staff, could staff just sort of explain what we're talking about here? So funding opportunities for community housing, capital repairs, and replacements. So could staff just give us the Coles notes and the viewing public, the Coles notes, please?
Hi, Deb Schlichter again. Yes, this report is really to give information about the various opportunities that are available either now or in the future that will help our housing providers, our community housing providers, maintain their buildings. So as you know, it's really important that buildings as they age, we make sure that we do the critical repairs and maintenance to make sure that they're proper, suitable, decent homes for our tenants. And this is always a concern once you build a building. How do you going to make sure that it stays in that shape for the entirety of its life? So this is just a summary of those kind of opportunities. Some are very specific to certain subsections of community housing providers, like only federal housing providers. Some are only specific to certain groups, but others. So we're trying to make sure that we've turned over every stone possible to investigate all the opportunities, and as new ones come available, to keep that kind of list So as our providers come to us and say, we have a really significant issue, we can't afford to pay through our current reserves, how are we going to change this elevator? For example, here are some opportunities, some places they can go. The accessory unit piece is really just tying into what's currently already available through the planning opportunities. And so this is just saying that, again, affordable housing, creating affordable housing is looking at every option that could be there. And there are people who live in very large homes, some seniors who aren't able to maintain their homes that are really looking for additional income. These are some opportunities to help people stay in their homes, as well as create new affordable units that we don't have to go out and construct. So as you heard, constructing new affordable units can be very costly. Are there other ways that we can create affordable units? So this is just piggybacking onto what's already currently available in the Planning Act, as a way to provide some a grant funding to help create something that's more affordable to the renter. Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you for that, Deb. Is there any other speakers before we go to, I see Councillor Sless, followed by Councillor McCurry, Councillor Antosky?
Sorry, I didn't take my hand down, or I didn't mean to, if I did.
We'll go with Councillor Antosky first. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, Councillor McCurry is quite right. Many of us are receiving concerns about the accessory dwelling. However, there's a balancing act here, and I think when we're looking at accessory dwellings, this is part of what they refer to as the missing middle. And I'm wondering, which in my mind is a huge component to both intensification and affordable housing. I'm wondering, what are our chances of reaching our goals and targets with affordable housing without not just looking at the missing middle, but actually utilizing the missing middle? If we don't use that, are we ever going to be able to reach our targets?
Which staff member would like to respond to that? It's a good question, Wen.
Thank you. Again, these are very good questions. We are looking at different ways of creating affordable housing, and there are so many different options, some of them that we aren't aware of yet. But you're right in terms of what are existing building structures, infill, intensification opportunities where it makes sense. There are places it doesn't make sense to do that. And so again, sticking to major corridors where there's a density already in place, where can we make those opportunities available to do affordable housing?
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Sless followed by Councillor McCurry next. So Councillor Sless, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess through to whoever staff want to deal with it, but I too have the same concerns. And I'm seeing it in my own neighborhood where houses are being built where they shouldn't be being built, but somebody's severing off for personal gain and sticking something very inappropriate where it shouldn't be. And the same thing with duplexing houses that, in my opinion, shouldn't be duplexed. And I guess my question through to staff is this funding enabling that to take place?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure there's anybody here from planning on the call who can answer some of those questions, but it's a very small fund, and there are very few people that will likely be interested in accessing it because there will be criteria as to who you can rent it to. So if you get a grant from this fund, if you approve that as part of the program, there are strings attached to that grant. You have to not sell your home within the 10-year period. And if you do, you have to pay it back. You have to rent it to people at a certain income level. There's all these kind of strings. So there's a lot of people who are not interested in getting the grant. It won't be a huge number of units that are created out of this.
When you say it's a small fund, could you define that in dollars?
Currently, the fund that we have for Ontario Renovates is around 200,000 this year. And so each year we get a pot of funding allocation, and we can decide where we want to put it. And some of it, this is the previous decision, was to put it in this amount into Ontario Renovates. There is another 3-year tranche coming up. By the end of this year will be announced the next 3-year tranche. And again, council will be able to decide how much to put into each of those fund areas.
And what is the maximum grant that can be received through this program?
$20,000.
20, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. Councillor McCreary, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. So my amendment would read that this be referred back to staff to create and implement a public engagement campaign to determine the appetite for funding accessory units in residential neighborhoods. Seeking a seconder. I see I have one, and I'll speak to it briefly, Mr. Chair, with your indulgence. Well, the Ontario Renovates Fund is a fund that we've typically used to help keep folks in their homes, to put roofs on homes, and to repair foundations and do necessary work to maintain the housing of people that are already in it. I think this broadens that sort of thing, and it's going to become extremely popular for these small renovator developers who are buying up corner lots. I know if I was in that business and I could get $20,000 worth of city money, I'd be quite happy to do it, and probably not needful of the money at all, unlike some of the folks that now qualify for the Ontario Renovates program. So I just think this is wrong-headed, and I'd like to hear from the community before we approve this. And I think taking the time to do some public consultation is quite appropriate. And I would hope that everybody would support this. We may determine that the community is quite okay with this and we can proceed, but I rather doubt that's not going to be the case, and that we're going to hear from folks whose neighborhoods have been negatively impacted by the intrusion of what's become multi-unit buildings where previously they were simply single residentials. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Davis next.
Thank you, Chair. On this subject, I want to make sure, and I'm asking staff, I mean, I support getting the public input on it, but I want to make sure that as we're going out, that we properly describe what it is this does, because my understanding is it's not about funding severances. It's not about allowing, co-op fourplexes. My understanding of the program, which the program meaning the change in zoning imposed on us by the province, was really more about granny flats for those lots that are large enough and have enough driveway space to accommodate it, not to create 6plexes, 4plexes, but maybe I'm wrong. So, but I think it's very critical then before we go out that it's clearly explain what it means and the type of additional units it would possibly create, and not work off people thinking what it is and thinking the worst when in fact that's not the case. So I'm hoping obviously planning staff would have to be involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Councillor Miller next, but just a reminder, Councillor Bell, to use the raise hand feature. Doesn't work for you? Okay, no problem. I'll put you on the list, sir.
If I had one, I'd do it.
Okay, Councillor Miller, followed by Councillor Bell. Go ahead, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate what Councillor McCreary is saying, and he's hearing from his constituents. I just question the use of social services staff doing something that I see as being in the realm of planning. We just went through this process at the county level where it was planning staff that brought forward we looked at additional residential units, ARUs, which I guess are additional dwelling units. And we just passed that. But I mean, for someone to go about and get an additional residential unit, there's certain criteria they have to meet. And it's fairly restrictive, but at the same time, I think we are complying with the provincial directives, which is they're trying to get more housing going. So, so in summary, I guess what I'm saying is I really appreciate, like I say, what Councillor McCurry says, and I know I've heard similar concerns from other constituents out my way, but I question. I'm not sure that social services using this what is a small pot of money, relatively speaking, is the way to go about getting public input on something like that. I honestly believe that that would be a better subject for the planning department. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, David Miller just covered a lot of the ground I was going to cover, but we went in the county through a public engagement exercise on this. So there's some useful information that's immediately available. I know it applies to the county, but there's a lot of generalities in there which you might find helpful. But I would endorse what David Miller just said, that it's more a planning issue than a social services issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCreary, do you have an amendment on this item?
No, I'm going to speak to the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and so item 5.1, could you just reiterate your amendment again, please, for everybody?
Yes, of course. That staff prepare an amendment, sorry. To refer to staff to create and implement a public engagement campaign to determine the appetite for funding accessory units in residential neighborhoods. And Mr. Chair, thank you for your indulgence. I believe I've not made myself quite clear on this item as indicated by some of the subsequent comments. What the public engagement campaign will entail is talking to the public about public money for these units, for public money supporting the creation of these auxiliary units, not granny flats, but auxiliary units. Granny flats makes them sound quite romantic. What they are is rental units that are rented by a landlord to folks that are willing to pay. So it's not about the planning approvals. We don't have any choice in that. Anybody can create a second unit, provided it's got life safety provisions to it, right? As long as it's safe to live in, you don't need special permission from the municipality anymore because the province granted that. So that's not about that, because we have no choice in that. What we do have choice in is whether public money is going to be devoted to the creation of these auxiliary units in neighborhoods that don't want them. And I'd like to consult with our constituents about that, okay? It's not about fourplexes and sixplexes, it's about individual units being created where previously there was none within a building frame, or by creating an auxiliary unit on a piece of property. It's just the funding, okay? It's not the planning, it's got nothing to do with planning. And social services staff won't be doing this public engagement campaign. It'll be corporation of the City of Brantford's communications department, which will do it, which is something they do every day. And apparently they've got pretty new toys that they can do these public engagement campaigns quite nicely with. So as I said before, it was mentioned by somebody that it's not a lot of money. Well, I happen to think $200,000 is a lot of money. And if you don't believe me, you can ask Larry Kings what a lot of money is, because we teased him about that for decades. So it's a lot of money. It's, you know, and it's being diverted from folks that we can keep in their homes by paying for their new roofs and their foundation repairs and all that stuff. And I don't think it should be going to support, you know, what are quite likely residential landlords who are in the business of renting out properties. Let them fund their own renovations.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments for item 5.1 and the amendment for item 5.1? Okay, seeing none, we will call the question on the amendment. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Sorry, it was seconded by Councillor Sless. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And now that brings us to the item 5.1 as amended. Is there any speaking opportunities anyone would like to use up to speak to this item? Seeing none, I will call the question on item 5.1 as amended. All those in favor, please put your hand. Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. And next on the agenda, I neglected to actually approve the minutes. So can I get a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes? Moved by Councillor McCreary, seconded by Councillor Sless. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes? That carries. And that there are no resolutions and there are no notices of motions. So this brings us to our unique ability to ask staff questions. So I have Councillor Wall, please go ahead. You are muted, sir.
Thank you, Chair Weaver, and congratulations on being chair, and Dan McCreary as well. Happy New Year, everybody. I have two questions. I apologize that I didn't send them in advance, but I was blindsided by them this morning as well. So in fairness, staff, if you're unable to answer, please get back to me at your convenience. The first question was, there is a post going around on social media by some individuals in our community who are claiming that there are city-owned properties that are supposed to be being used for affordable housing sitting vacant. Do we have residential properties in our inventory that are empty? Is there any truth to that?
Through the chair, there are no vacant units that are currently not being worked on or might have some maintenance issues. But I believe the concerns on social media were around two specific market rent units. Those particular units had some significant issues, and some of the reasons that the individuals, in fact, two of the people that left those units were deceased, and it required a tremendous amount of work. Both of those units have been rented. We do not have vacant units sitting out there anywhere. We track our vacancy rate very, very closely, given the fact that there is a tremendous need for affordable housing. So if there is a vacant unit, it is because there's either maintenance going on in that unit, or the unit has been rented and the individual is in the process of either giving that 60-day notice or in the final stages of selling their home. There is no vacant unit per se, tracked very closely.
I really appreciate you answering the question. I mean, that's what I expected and was hoping to hear, but I promised that I would ask. So it was on record. And then the second question, and this one just came in this morning, a constituent who is downtown was talking about, you know, the optics of what's going on downtown right now. And their claim was that they're being told that there are people who are unable to access services from social services. And I dispelled that, saying that in my experience, if you called me or you called the city and booked a meeting with a social worker, you would get a meeting with a social worker. There's nobody right now who's being declined or turned away from social services if they request help, is the question.
Through the chair, no, the process is very clear that everyone who requests service gets service. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be happy with the response that we have, but we certainly take every issue seriously and help everybody. We have changed our format just this month for our homeless individuals. There is a different way to access those services, but services are accessible as they always were. Perhaps it's an issue of not being able to access our office, but it is by appointment, and certainly everyone is being offered every available service as appropriate.
And then final question, if I may, Mr. Chair. If someone in our community didn't have internet access or didn't have steady access to a phone, what is the best way during the COVID-19 pandemic and during the new, the new situation? Like, what is the best way for them to inquire or to reach out to get help?
Through the chair, that is tricky if they don't have a phone, because we are offering services through appointments. So being able to borrow a phone or reach out to a neighbor or another agency, that is the way. During the lockdown, we are offering services by appointments, often phone appointments or in-person appointments as required. Our offices are open for a segment of the day, but indeed it is tricky if they can't access us. We haven't heard that situation happening very often. Generally, there's someone that can assist that individual to reach out to us, and then we offer services. They are also able to attend at the Salvation Army for homelessness services as well.
So that's what I wanted to hear. So in the event that, they couldn't get a phone or access to internet, they could reach out to Rosewood or Salvation Army or some of the other nonprofit organizations in the community to. Can you walk
Absolutely.
into social services downtown right now?
Through the chair, no, it is, right now you cannot. It is by appointment only. We have, our offices are open at certain parts of the day. So we have access every day, but it is by appointment.
Okay, maybe my request, can I make a request, Chair Weaver?
So I don't believe there's a limit on question period, but you
I don't
are
want to keep everybody here all day.
5-minute mark.
Okay.
So if there's something relevant to our mandate as a social service committee, I would say go ahead. If not, I would suggest maybe giving an email to staff to respond that way.
Awesome. My request is simple. Could we find a way that if somebody were to walk to the social services building and request help, that there is some way that they could be directed to how to best do it? And then next, could perhaps we work with communications to distribute some type of material that states, you know, we're still in full swing, and if you need help, here's how to get it. Because I know that documentation exists pre-pandemic. I don't know if it exists now. And I mean, the thought that people think that there are people downtown not getting help because we're not offering it disturbs me greatly, because I know it not to be true, but I want the public to know loud and clear that there isn't anybody in our community who's seeking help that can't get it if they want it, because it's there. I know it's there. And sorry, but I mean, like, that's what we're here for. Thank you for indulging me, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCreary, question?
Indeed, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to follow up on something that Councillor Wall had indicated. Mary Ellen, I wonder if you might circulate a memo describing what our policy and practice is with relation to turning over vacant units to new tenants. And secondly, if you could describe some of the extraordinary circumstances that might lead to us not meeting our own goal. And thirdly, is staff confident that they could act upon Councillor Wall's request for a specific communications piece without directing a resolution to staff in the communications department?
Through the chair, absolutely. We can certainly provide those, and we are confident that we can work with communications to get further messaging out to the community that no one is denied services. And absolutely, we can come forward with a memo around our vacancy policy.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any other raised hands for questions. So with that, we will adjourn the Social Service Committee meeting. I would like to also thank members of the committee for supporting myself and Councillor McCreary for chair and vice chair of this committee. And with that, we